What if I told you that everything you thought you knew about the royal family, everything you believed about loyalty, tradition, and honor, was about to be turned upside down? What if the man at the center of the monarchy, King Charles himself, had reached a point where he could no longer stay silent, where the secrets, the betrayals, the fractured loyalties had built up to a breaking point? Imagine the tension, the whispering halls of Buckingham Palace, the private letters exchanged under the veil of discretion, and suddenly, it all exploding into the public eye. That's where we are today. That's the storm brewing behind closed doors, and the question isn't just what will happen next. It's whether the monarchy as we know it can survive this moment. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. It begins with a quiet figure, often overshadowed by the pageantry and public ceremonies, but one who has never been afraid to speak her mind. Princess, and known for her steadfast dedication and unflinching honesty, has long been a stabilizing force in the family. But now, even she has reached a point where silence is no longer an option. Reports are emerging that, and known for her disciplined approach and reserved public demeanor, has confronted King Charles, demanding that something must be done about the rift that has torn through the family for years. For decades, the public has seen her as the unflappable, dependable member of the royal family, the princess who quietly carried out her duties with precision and poise. But behind the carefully curated image, tensions were simmering, and now, those tensions are threatening to boil over into something explosive. The trigger? Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Their story has been told and retold in countless headlines, talk shows, and documentaries. Yet every time the narrative seems to settle, another revelation emerges. Their departure from royal duties, their outspoken interviews, and their legal battles have not only strained relationships, but reshaped public perceptions of the monarchy itself. And now, King Charles has reportedly taken the unprecedented step of asking the UK Parliament to strip them of all royal titles and privileges, an action that sends shockwaves not just through the palace, but across the nation and the world. Why does this matter now? Because unlike past royal scandals that simmered quietly behind palace walls, this is different. The stakes are no longer just familial. They are political, legal, and global. Parliament is now a player in a story that once belonged purely to the family, and the timing couldn't be more critical. The monarchy is facing intense scrutiny from a public that is divided, media outlets hungry for every detail, and an international community that watches every move with fascination. The consequences of this decision are enormous, potentially altering the structure, perception, and even the future of the British monarchy. But let's step back for a moment and consider the human element. This isn't just about laws, titles, or ceremonial privileges. At its core, it's about family, a family bound by duty, tradition, and history, yet fractured by modern challenges, personal choices, and public scrutiny. Imagine being in the middle of a situation where every move is dissected, every word analyzed, and every emotion scrutinized. How do you maintain loyalty when the eyes of the world are upon you? How do you navigate betrayal when it's not just private, but public, viral, and global? Princess Anne's role in this unfolding drama is crucial. Unlike some family members who have remained largely silent, she has a reputation for speaking truth to power. It's reported that she has repeatedly expressed concern over the handling of Harry and Meghan's departure and the resulting media fallout. Sources suggest that Anne sees the situation not just as a personal betrayal, but as a threat to the integrity of the monarchy itself. Her insistence on action represents a turning point, a moment where private grievances intersect with public duty, forcing King Charles to confront the reality that the family's fractures can no longer be ignored. And then there's King Charles, the man who has spent decades preparing for his reign, cultivating relationships, and navigating the complex web of royal tradition, now finds himself in a position he may never have anticipated. Reports indicate that Charles has reached a point of exasperation, a point where patience has run out. The call to Parliament is not just a legal maneuver. It's a statement, a declaration that the monarchy must assert its authority and protect its legacy. Yet this action is fraught with risk. Stripping royal titles is a move loaded with symbolism, one that could provoke further public backlash, intensify family conflict, and invites scrutiny of every decision he has ever made. The tension is palpable. Imagine the palace corridors, hushed conversations, and the weight of history pressing down on every decision. Consider the private conversations that never see the light of day, the whispered warnings, and the strategic counsel that guides every move. Every advisor, every senior royal official, is acutely aware that one misstep could ignite a firestorm. And in the midst of all this, Harry and Meghan are not passive observers. Sources suggest they are strategizing, preparing responses, and leveraging public opinion in ways that could dramatically alter the outcome. What makes this story so compelling and so urgent is that it's about more than titles or privileges. It's about power, influence, loyalty, and perception. It's about a royal family grappling with the clash between tradition and modernity, between private loyalty and public scrutiny. Every decision has consequences, every statement carries weight, and every leak, rumor, or revelation has the potential to reshape the narrative entirely. And the public is watching, not passively, but actively, with opinions forming in real time, social media amplifying every nuance, and journalists dissecting every gesture. Even now, as we speak, whispers of secret letters, undisclosed meetings, and confidential advice are beginning to surface. Sources indicate that there are documents that could prove pivotal. Letters that reveal the true feelings of the principal players, communications that expose rifts and alliances, and memos that outline potential strategies. The palace, once a symbol of unshakable tradition and decorum, is now a stage for drama that rivals any fictional narrative. And while the world watches, questions mount. Will King Charles succeed in his unprecedented request to Parliament? How will Harry and Meghan respond? Can Princess Anne's intervention steer the family toward resolution, or will it deepen the divide? How will the public react to a monarchy that is simultaneously revered, scrutinized, and challenged? Each answer is uncertain, and every turn carries the potential for scandal, revelation, or even reconciliation. But perhaps the most compelling aspect of all is the human story at the heart of this unfolding drama. Beyond the titles, beyond the privileges, beyond the political and public ramifications, this is a story of family, of love, betrayal, loyalty, and heartbreak. Every member of this royal family faces impossible choices, navigating the delicate balance between duty and personal conviction, between public expectation and private desire. And in the shadows of these choices lies a truth that few have ever glimpsed. The monarchy, for all its grandeur and pageantry, is still composed of human beings, vulnerable to emotion, error, and the consequences of their actions. So as we dive into the details, the letters, the meetings, the strategies, and the secrets that have led to this moment, ask yourself this. If you were in their shoes, could you handle the weight of history pressing on your shoulders while every move is scrutinized by the world? Could you balance personal loyalty against the survival of a centuries-old institution? The answers are not simple, and the path ahead is anything but predictable. And yet, despite the stakes, despite the tension, despite the uncertainty, one thing is clear. The time for secrecy is over. The moment of reckoning has arrived, and what happens next will define the monarchy for generations to come. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What do you do when your family, the one you've known your whole life, begins to unravel right in front of your eyes? For Princess Anne, that question is no longer hypothetical. Known to the public as the princess who does everything, she has long carried the weight of royal duty with precision and dignity. But behind the carefully maintained facade of poise and commitment, tension has been building, tension that has now reached a breaking point. Sources suggest that Anne, often described as fiercely independent and unafraid to speak her mind, has begun to confront the reality that silence is no longer an option. The family she has devoted her life to is fractured, and the decisions made within the palace walls are no longer just private matters. They are public crises that could define the monarchy for years to come. Princess Anne has always been known for her dedication to duty. She is one of the hardest-working royals in history, consistently performing more official engagements than almost any other family member. Her reputation as hard-working but aloof, belies a complexity that few outside the palace truly understand. Behind the polished appearances and ceremonial routines is a woman acutely aware of the fragility of the family institution she represents. And now, confronted with the unprecedented scandal surrounding Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, and finds herself in a position she never anticipated, having to actively intervene in a family conflict of historic proportions. The rift began long before headlines began screaming about public interviews, Netflix deals, or legal battles. Royal insiders describe years of simmering tensions, subtle disagreements, whispered criticisms, and private resentments that accumulated over decades. And, who has long been a mediator within the family, reportedly tried to navigate these tensions quietly, offering advice, counsel, and occasionally gentle reprimands. But in recent months, sources indicate that she reached a point of exasperation. The public fallout from Harry and Meghan's actions, their departure from royal duties, the explosive interviews, and the growing perception of division within the monarchy was too significant to ignore. Something had to be done, and Anne decided that she could not remain silent. It is said that Anne's approach is both pragmatic and blunt. Unlike some family members who rely heavily on public image management or carefully worded statements, Anne is known for saying what she believes needs to be said. In private, she reportedly confronted King Charles with the stark reality of the situation. If decisive action is not taken, the monarchy risks permanent damage to its credibility and authority. Her intervention is said to have been direct, framed not as personal criticism, but as a warning grounded in history and duty. She reminded Charles that the family's public perception is fragile, and that unchecked scandals could erode trust not only within the UK, but across the Commonwealth. At the same time, Anne's position within the family is complex. She is loyal to her father, to her brother, and to the institution itself, but she is also fiercely independent. That independence allows her to speak truths that others might avoid, but it also places her in a precarious position. By taking a public stand, even indirectly, she risks alienating members of the family or drawing unwanted attention to herself. Yet sources indicate that Anne views the risk as necessary. The stakes are simply too high to remain on the sidelines. What makes this moment particularly striking is the nature of Anne's warnings. They are not vague or theoretical. They are concrete, specific, and urgent. She reportedly outlined scenarios in which the continued public exposure of family disputes could trigger political intervention, media escalation, and a permanent erosion of public confidence. She framed the issue not as a matter of personal loyalty, but as a structural crisis, one that threatens the very foundation of the monarchy. And in doing so, she forced King Charles to confront a reality he may have hoped could be contained behind palace walls. Anne's intervention also sheds light on her relationship with Prince Harry. While she has been consistently supportive of her family members, sources suggest that Anne views some of Harry's actions as reckless and damaging, particularly in the context of public perception. She reportedly recognizes his intentions, a desire for independence, a wish to define his own path. But she is equally aware that those intentions have consequences far beyond his personal life. Her perspective is shaped by decades of observing the delicate balance of family duty, public expectation, and historical legacy. In Anne's view, the monarchy cannot survive if individual desires consistently override institutional stability. At the same time, Anne's intervention is not merely reactive, it is strategic. She is said to have encouraged King Charles to consider both immediate and long-term measures. This includes engaging with Parliament, clarifying the status of royal titles, and ensuring that the family's position is communicated effectively to the public. She is not acting out of malice or personal vendetta. Rather, she is guided by a clear understanding of the stakes. The monarchy, she believes, is an institution that must be preserved, even if that requires uncomfortable conversations, difficult decisions, and public scrutiny. But Anne's intervention is only part of the story. The internal dynamics of the royal family are extraordinarily complex, shaped by decades of tradition, hierarchy, and unspoken expectations. Even as she urges action, she must navigate the sensitivities of other family members, from the queen consort to younger siblings, from trusted advisors to distant cousins. Every conversation carries risk, every decision has implications, and every action is closely observed by both insiders and the public. It is a high-stakes chess game, and is playing with pieces that carry both personal and institutional significance. The ripple effects of her intervention are already being felt. Insiders report heightened tensions within the palace, with advisors, staff, and family members acutely aware that a turning point has been reached. Meetings are described as tense, with carefully chosen words, guarded expressions, and an undercurrent of anxiety. Every phone call, every email, every decision is scrutinized for its potential impact. Anne's decision to speak out has not resolved the conflict. If anything, it has amplified the urgency, signaling to all parties that the time for passive observation has ended. Public perception is also a critical factor. While the monarchy has weathered numerous scandals over the centuries, the current situation is uniquely challenging. Harry and Meghan's global profile, combined with the pervasive reach of social media, ensures that every action, statement, or leak is amplified and analyzed. Anne's involvement adds another layer of complexity. The public is keenly aware of her reputation for honesty and diligence, and her intervention signals that the family itself acknowledges the seriousness of the crisis. In a sense, her voice acts as both a warning and a call to action, a signal that the monarchy must confront the issues openly rather than allowing them to fester. Yet the personal stakes cannot be ignored. Anne is not simply a royal figurehead. She is a daughter, a sister, and an aunt. She has personal relationships with each of the principal players in this drama, and her choices are informed by both affection and responsibility. She understands the emotional toll of public scrutiny, the pain of perceived betrayal, and the difficulty of balancing family loyalty with institutional duty. Her perspective is shaped by a nuanced understanding of both personal and public consequences, making her intervention both credible and compelling. And so, the rift that has long simmered beneath the surface is now fully exposed, and has stepped into the fray, challenging King Charles to act decisively, warning of the potential consequences of inaction, and insisting that the monarchy's credibility is at stake. Her role is pivotal, her influence substantial, and her message unambiguous. The family cannot afford to ignore the realities of the situation any longer. But what comes next is uncertain. How will King Charles respond to Anne's intervention? Will her warnings lead to decisive action, or will they be met with resistance, hesitation, or compromise? And what of Prince Harry and Meghan? How will they react if the palace moves against them? The stakes are enormous, the tensions are high, and every decision carries the weight of history. In the shadows of Buckingham Palace, the stage is set for a confrontation that could define the monarchy for generations. Every whisper, every strategic move, every public statement is part of a larger story, one that is unfolding in real time, with consequences that reach far beyond the palace walls. The royal rift, once quiet and contained, is now impossible to ignore. And as Princess Anne takes her place in this unfolding drama, one question looms over everything. Can the monarchy survive a crisis born of both family loyalty and public scrutiny? Or is this just the beginning of a reckoning that no one can contain? But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. King Charles had reached a breaking point. For decades, he had been groomed for this role, prepared for the weight of a crown that carries centuries of tradition, expectation, and scrutiny. Yet nothing in his lifetime had prepared him for the storm that now threatened to engulf the monarchy. A storm not caused by foreign adversaries or political upheaval, but by members of his own family. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, once symbols of modernity and hope for a new generation of royals, had become the center of a controversy that challenged not just public perception, but the very structure of royal authority. And now, after weeks of private consultations, tense conversations, and mounting frustration, Charles made a decision that would send shockwaves throughout the kingdom. He formally called upon the UK Parliament to strip Harry and Meghan of all royal titles and privileges. The decision did not come lightly. King Charles had spent years navigating the delicate balance between family loyalty and institutional duty. He had watched as Harry and Meghan pursued independence, relocating to North America, securing lucrative media deals, and publicly questioning the monarchy's relevance. Each move had chipped away at the facade of unity that the royal family had meticulously maintained for generations. In private, Charles reportedly expressed disappointment, sadness, and even betrayal. In public, he remained composed, adhering to the careful protocols of royal decorum. But behind closed doors, the situation had escalated to a point where silence was no longer an option. Charles's ultimatum is as unprecedented as it is dramatic. While the monarchy has experienced scandals before, the idea of formally petitioning Parliament to strip titles is virtually unheard of in modern history. It is a maneuver loaded with symbolism, conveying both authority and resolve. It is a message to Harry and Meghan, to the public, and to the Commonwealth. The institution of the monarchy will not be undermined, and breaches of duty and protocol will have consequences. Legal experts suggest that while the process is complex, Charles has positioned himself strategically, relying on a combination of historical precedent, constitutional authority, and public expectation to justify the move. The timing of the ultimatum is critical. Sources indicate that Charles waited until the situation could no longer be managed behind palace walls. He consulted senior advisors, legal counsel, and members of the Privy Council, weighing the risks of public backlash against the potential erosion of royal authority. Every consideration pointed to one conclusion: decisive action was necessary. And yet, even with careful planning, the stakes could not have been higher. The public's reaction was unpredictable, the media relentless, and the family dynamics volatile. One wrong move could escalate a private family dispute into a national crisis. Charles's decision was informed by multiple factors, not least of which was Princess Anne's intervention. Her warnings about the potential damage to the monarchy carried weight, reminding Charles that the situation was no longer just personal, it was institutional. Her insistence on action crystallized his thinking, framing the issue as one of survival rather than retribution. By acting now, he could assert control over the narrative, demonstrate decisive leadership, and reinforce the monarchy's relevance in a modern, media-driven world. Yet the ultimatum is about more than legal or symbolic authority. It is also about perception. The monarchy exists not just in reality, but in the minds of the public. Every action is interpreted, judged, and broadcast on a global stage. Charles's move is designed to reinforce the perception of control, stability, and principled leadership. It is a calculated risk, balancing the potential backlash against the need to demonstrate accountability, discipline, and adherence to royal duty. The message is clear: titles and privileges are not entitlements. They are responsibilities, and those responsibilities carry consequences. The private reaction within the palace was intense. Advisors describe a flurry of activity following the announcement of the ultimatum. Legal teams were mobilized, communication strategies developed, and contingency plans drafted. The atmosphere was reportedly tense, with every detail scrutinized for potential pitfalls. Charles himself is said to have been meticulous in his approach, ensuring that the request to Parliament was framed not as a personal vendetta, but as a matter of institutional integrity. Every word, every phrasing, every procedural step was carefully considered. Public reaction was equally unpredictable. While some hailed the move as a necessary assertion of authority, others criticized it as harsh or vindictive. Social media lit up with debate, commentators speculated on the motives behind the decision, and global media outlets covered every nuance. The world was watching as a modern monarchy confronted one of the most contentious internal disputes in recent history. And yet, despite the scrutiny, Charles remained resolute. He understood that leadership required not only courage but conviction, even in the face of potential controversy. The ultimatum also placed Harry and Meghan in an unprecedented position. No longer could they navigate their independence without consequence. The formal involvement of Parliament meant that their status, privileges, and titles were now subject to legal and political scrutiny. This development marked a turning point in their relationship with the monarchy, a shift from informal disagreement to formal dispute, with ramifications that extended beyond personal grievance to the very structure of royal authority. Sources suggest that Charles's advisors anticipated possible reactions from Harry and Meghan, ranging from public statements to legal challenges. Contingency plans were reportedly drawn up for every scenario, from cooperative compliance to aggressive countermaneuvers. The palace understood that the situation was now dynamic, fluid, and potentially explosive. Every communication, every media appearance, every strategic move by Harry and Meghan had the power to alter the course of the unfolding crisis. But beyond strategy and procedure, the ultimatum carries an emotional weight that cannot be understated. Charles is a father, navigating a deeply personal conflict that now intersects with his public role. He faces the dual challenge of maintaining family relationships while upholding the responsibilities of the crown. The tension between personal loyalty and institutional duty is acute, and every decision carries moral, emotional, and historical implications. The personal and the political are intertwined in a way that makes every choice both significant and perilous. Legal experts suggest that the Parliament's involvement is as much about symbolism as substance. By formally petitioning lawmakers, Charles demonstrates that the monarchy operates within a constitutional framework and that breaches of protocol and responsibility have consequences. This move reinforces the legitimacy of the Crown's authority while signaling to the public and the Commonwealth that the institution remains committed to transparency, accountability, and order. It is a strategic assertion of power, carefully designed to protect both reputation and legacy. At the same time, there are whispers of internal dissent. Not everyone within the palace or the royal household may agree with the severity of the ultimatum. Some may question whether public escalation is the best path forward, fearing further media scrutiny, political controversy, or damage to family relationships. These internal dynamics add another layer of tension, illustrating that even within the monarchy, consensus is neither guaranteed nor easily achieved. And then there is the public narrative. Charles's ultimatum is not just an internal matter. It is a story for the world to witness, analyze, and interpret. Headlines abound with speculation, commentary, and debate. Social media amplifies every detail, every rumor, and every perceived misstep. Global audiences weigh in, often with strong opinions, creating a pressure cooker environment that amplifies the stakes. For Charles, navigating this landscape requires not only legal precision but media savvy, emotional intelligence, and a keen understanding of public perception. The decision to involve Parliament is also unprecedented in terms of timing. While previous royal disputes have been handled behind closed doors, this move signals a willingness to confront challenges openly and decisively. It is a demonstration of leadership, a statement that the monarchy will not be passive in the face of disruption, and a signal to the family and the public that responsibility and accountability are non-negotiable. Yet, as calculated as this move may be, it is fraught with uncertainty. Harry and Meghan are not passive actors. Reports indicate that they are preparing responses, weighing legal options, and potentially leveraging public opinion to counteract the ultimatum. The dynamic is fluid, unpredictable, and potentially explosive. Every action and reaction will influence the course of the conflict, and no one can predict with certainty how it will unfold. Charles's ultimatum, therefore, is both a declaration and a challenge. It asserts authority, demands accountability, and signals a turning point in the monarchy's relationship with Harry and Meghan. It also sets the stage for a confrontation that is as much about values, legacy, and institutional survival as it is about titles or privileges. The stakes are monumental, and the consequences are far-reaching. As the palace prepares for the next chapter in this unfolding drama, the world watches, waiting for the inevitable response. The tension is palpable, the stakes immense, and every move carries weight. What comes next could redefine the monarchy, reshape public perception, and alter the course of history. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Few figures in modern royal history have captured global attention like Meghan Markle. From the moment she entered the royal fold, she became a lightning rod for fascination, criticism, and debate. But the narrative that followed her and Prince Harry was far more complex than headlines suggested. The public saw a glamorous couple, a modern princess challenging tradition. Behind the cameras and the public appearances, however, tensions were simmering. Tensions that would eventually ignite a media firestorm with consequences that the monarchy could neither ignore nor control. From the outset, Meghan's presence in the royal family was a disruptor. She was American, biracial, and independent-minded, all qualities that challenged centuries of convention. Supporters celebrated her as a breath of fresh air, a symbol of modernity and progress. Critics, however, framed her as an outsider, someone who did not fully understand the rules, etiquette, or unspoken hierarchy of the monarchy. Every move she made was scrutinized: her fashion choices, her public appearances, her family relationships. Nothing escaped the microscope of media and public judgment. And the more she was criticized, the more polarized the conversation became. The turning point came after the couple's decision to step back from royal duties. While the public was already aware of friction within the family, the announcement sent shockwaves around the world. This was not merely a personal choice. It was a radical statement that challenged the very nature of the monarchy. Harry and Meghan were asserting independence, both financially and socially, in ways that had rarely been seen before. Their move ignited a firestorm of commentary, speculation, and outrage. Newspapers, television programs, and online platforms dissected every detail, amplifying tensions that had previously been confined to private palace discussions. But Meghan's role in this narrative cannot be reduced to media perception alone. She is, by all accounts, intelligent, strategic, and aware of the power of public opinion. Sources suggest that she understood the stakes from the beginning, that her actions would reverberate far beyond personal consequences. Whether it was the carefully curated interviews, the strategic appearances, or the global media deals, Meghan approached each move with an acute awareness of impact. And while some framed these actions as self-serving, others argue that they were protective measures, a way to secure her family's independence and safety in an environment that had proven hostile and invasive. The media storm surrounding Meghan intensified with every public statement. Her candid interviews, particularly those that addressed alleged internal conflicts and family dynamics, became international sensations. The revelations were shocking not just because of their content, but because they provided a glimpse behind the carefully maintained facade of royal unity. Viewers were captivated, scandalized, and intrigued, and the narrative quickly spread far beyond the United Kingdom. Public reactions ranged from support to outrage, with social media acting as both amplifier and battleground. Every tweet, every headline, and every viral post added fuel to the fire, creating a pressure cooker environment that the palace struggled to manage. This public scrutiny also influenced internal royal dynamics. Members of the family and their advisors were acutely aware that Meghan's global profile gave her significant leverage in the narrative. Her actions could sway public opinion, influence media coverage, and even affect political perceptions. For King Charles and Princess Anne, the challenge was not just about responding to a family dispute. It was about managing a public relations crisis on an unprecedented scale. Every decision, every communication, every gesture had to be calculated to mitigate damage while preserving authority and credibility. And yet, Meghan's influence extended beyond the headlines. Sources suggest that she played a strategic role in shaping Harry's approach to the situation. Her perspective, her counsel, and her insistence on agency reportedly guided many of the couple's decisions. Together, they navigated a complex landscape of tradition, expectation, and scrutiny, often in ways that defied conventional wisdom. The monarchy, accustomed to controlling narratives within its walls, found itself responding to a narrative that was now being actively shaped by Meghan and amplified across the globe. The intensity of the media storm cannot be overstated. Every interview, every social media post, every public appearance became fodder for analysis, commentary, and speculation. News cycles operated at a relentless pace, with new revelations emerging daily. Analysts debated motives, journalists dug for insider information, and the public engaged in passionate discourse. In this environment, the palace's traditional methods of controlling narrative were insufficient. The rules had changed, and Meghan was at the center of this new, fast-moving reality. Critically, this media scrutiny also shaped public perception of the monarchy itself. For many, Meghan became a symbol of resistance, independence, and the desire to challenge outdated structures. For others, she represented disruption, defiance, and a breach of decorum. This polarization complicated the monarchy's response, as decisions had to account not only for institutional integrity, but for the unpredictable sway of public sentiment. Every move risked alienating one faction while appeasing another, creating a delicate balance that required careful navigation. Within the palace, Meghan's influence and visibility created a ripple effect. Advisors, staff, and family members were forced to adapt to a new reality in which private family dynamics were subject to constant public observation. Meetings that would once have remained confidential now carried the potential for leaks, interpretations, and media amplification. Every interaction was scrutinized, and the stakes for miscalculation were higher than ever. In this sense, Meghan's role was transformative. She altered not only the public narrative but the internal dynamics of the family itself. The couple's actions also had legal and financial implications. Their independence from royal duties meant navigating complex questions about funding, security, and privileges. Negotiations over these matters were fraught with tension, as advisors sought to reconcile protocol with the couple's desires for autonomy. Each decision, each compromise, became part of a larger narrative of control, authority, and agency. The result was a situation that was simultaneously legal, political, and deeply personal, a convergence of forces that few in modern history had faced within the royal family. Public outrage and support further complicated matters. Social media campaigns, petitions, and viral commentary demonstrated that the public was no longer a passive observer. People took sides, argued fiercely, and projected their own values and expectations onto the family. For the monarchy, this meant that any action or inaction could have immediate and far-reaching consequences. Meghan's presence had effectively transformed a family dispute into a global conversation about identity, authority, and responsibility. And yet, the story is not simply one of conflict. It is also a story of strategy, courage, and the assertion of agency in an environment historically resistant to change. Meghan's approach, while controversial, demonstrated a keen understanding of the interplay between media, public perception, and institutional power. She recognized the stakes, anticipated reactions, and positioned herself and Harry in a way that amplified their voices and protected their interests. In doing so, she became not just a participant in royal drama, but a catalyst for structural and cultural change within the monarchy. The combination of media scrutiny, public outrage, and institutional tension set the stage for an unprecedented escalation. The palace could no longer manage the situation behind closed doors. The global attention, amplified by social media and relentless reporting, created pressure that demanded action. And it was within this context that King Charles's ultimatum, backed by Princess Anne's counsel, became not only necessary but inevitable. Yet the dynamics remained fluid. Meghan and Harry were not passive. They were responsive, strategic, and aware of the high stakes. Every move by the monarchy was met with calculated consideration, and every public reaction influenced subsequent decisions. The unfolding narrative became a complex dance of perception, authority, and public engagement. The world watched as headlines, interviews, and viral posts fueled speculation and debate. Analysts, commentators, and royal watchers tried to predict the next move, but the truth was elusive, layered, and evolving. In this environment, Meghan's influence was undeniable. She had become both a focal point and a force multiplier, shaping the conversation, influencing decisions, and challenging the traditional boundaries of royal protocol. And while the media storm raged, the family braced for the next act. Charles's ultimatum had been delivered, Princess Anne had intervened, and Meghan had effectively shifted the terms of engagement. The next chapter of this drama would be defined not only by institutional decisions, but by public reaction, media interpretation, and strategic maneuvering on all sides. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Imagine living your entire life under a microscope, where every word, every gesture, and every decision is scrutinized by millions, dissected by experts, and debated endlessly in the public sphere. For Prince Harry, this has been reality from birth. Yet nothing in his upbringing could have fully prepared him for the storm that erupted when he and Meghan Markle chose to step away from royal duties. Suddenly, The carefully constructed world of protocol, duty, and tradition collided with the modern realities of media scrutiny, global fame, and personal autonomy, and Harry was at the center of it. For years, Harry had navigated life in the shadow of expectation. As the younger son of Princess Diana and Prince Charles, he carried a legacy both heavy and complex. His mother's global fame, his father's public responsibilities, and the public's unrelenting attention created an environment where mistakes were magnified and successes were often downplayed. Harry grew up acutely aware of the delicate balance required to maintain personal identity while fulfilling institutional obligations. Every smile, every handshake, every public appearance was calculated, or at least meant to appear so. The decision to step back from royal duties was not made lightly. Sources close to Harry describe months, even years, of internal struggle, conversations with advisors, and private reflections. He faced a dilemma that many outsiders cannot fully understand: how to honor family duty while also protecting personal well-being, marriage, and future plans. In Harry's view, remaining within the traditional confines of the monarchy meant sacrificing personal autonomy, privacy, and, at times, mental health. The choice to leave was, in his mind, a necessary act of self-preservation, but one fraught with consequence. Harry's perspective is shaped not only by personal experience, but by the broader context of his family's history. He witnessed firsthand the pressures that defined Princess Diana's life, the scrutiny she endured, and the limitations imposed by royal protocol. Her tragic death left an indelible mark on him, shaping his approach to public life and personal decision-making. He became hyper-aware of the dangers of intrusion, of misrepresentation, and of being trapped within a system that often prioritized image over well-being. In stepping back, Harry and Meghan effectively challenged centuries of tradition. Their decision to pursue independence was unprecedented in its scope and visibility. Sources suggest that Harry approached the matter with careful deliberation, understanding that the consequences would extend beyond personal choice. Every move, from interviews to media partnerships, was part of a strategy designed to assert autonomy while navigating a complex web of familial, legal, and public considerations. Yet, even with careful planning, the reaction was overwhelming. The global media, accustomed to the steady rhythm of palace announcements and ceremonial events, erupted with commentary. Social media platforms became battlegrounds, and public opinion polarized around Harry's choices. Supporters praised his courage, framing his actions as a necessary step toward modernization and personal agency. Critics condemned the move as selfish or disloyal, arguing that Harry had abandoned his duty at a critical juncture. Harry was suddenly caught between the expectations of his family, the demands of the monarchy, and the unrelenting judgment of the public. The emotional stakes were equally high. Sources describe Harry as experiencing a mix of frustration, disappointment, and isolation. He reportedly felt that despite his loyalty and dedication, the institution he had been born into failed to provide the support and understanding he needed. Meghan, as both partner and advisor, played a critical role in navigating these emotional and strategic challenges. Together, they had to manage not only their own reactions but anticipate the responses of advisors, family members, and the public. Every step required careful calculation, emotional resilience, and a willingness to endure intense scrutiny. Behind the headlines, Harry's actions reveal a deeply strategic mind. He understood that stepping back would trigger both legal and political responses, and he reportedly worked closely with legal teams and media strategists to prepare for every eventuality. Yet despite these preparations, the involvement of King Charles and the formal request to Parliament introduced new, unpredictable variables. Harry suddenly faced a scenario he had not fully anticipated, an institutional pushback that threatened titles, privileges, and, more importantly, public perception. The weight of legacy also loomed large. Harry is intimately aware that every decision he makes carries symbolic significance. His choice to step back, to speak publicly, and to pursue independence is interpreted not merely as a personal act, but as a challenge to the monarchy itself. For centuries, royal behavior has been governed by unspoken rules, inherited duty, and precedent. By acting differently, Harry forced the institution and the public to confront uncomfortable questions about tradition, relevance, and the evolving role of royals in the modern world. The strain on personal relationships has been immense. Reports indicate that communication within the family became increasingly fraught, with conversations marked by tension, disappointment, and misunderstanding. Harry's bond with his father, King Charles, has been particularly strained. Sources suggest that discussions, once private and potentially constructive, increasingly devolved into conflict and stalemate. The ultimatum from Charles only intensified these tensions, creating a scenario in which every interaction carried emotional, legal, and symbolic weight. Harry's perspective also highlights the challenges of global visibility. Unlike previous royal disputes, this conflict plays out on an international stage, amplified by 24-hour news cycles and social media scrutiny. Every interview, public appearance, and statement has consequences far beyond the immediate audience. The couple's decisions are interpreted, debated, and often misrepresented, creating a feedback loop in which perception shapes reality. For Harry, navigating this environment requires constant vigilance, strategic thinking, and emotional resilience. Despite the pressure, Harry's resolve appears unwavering. Sources describe a determination to protect his family, assert independence, and challenge a system he perceives as both outdated and rigid. Yet, even as he takes these steps, the stakes could not be higher. The potential loss of royal titles, privileges, and public standing introduces a new layer of risk. Every decision now carries not only personal but institutional consequences, forcing Harry to balance his own interests with the broader implications for the monarchy and his public image. In private, Harry reportedly struggles with the tension between duty and personal conviction. He is deeply aware of the expectations placed upon him, the historical legacy he inherits, and the scrutiny that will accompany every move. Yet he is also acutely conscious of his own limitations and needs. Mental health, personal freedom, and the welfare of his family have become central considerations in decisions that once might have been guided solely by tradition. This internal conflict, played out against a backdrop of global attention, creates a scenario that is as emotionally complex as it is publicly visible. At the same time, Harry's strategic decisions are informed by a clear understanding of narrative power. By carefully controlling public appearances, media interactions, and statements, he and Meghan have effectively managed perception while asserting autonomy. The couple's actions illustrate a sophisticated approach to influence, one that leverages both traditional media and digital platforms to shape the story on their own terms. In doing so, they have demonstrated a profound awareness of the interplay between personal agency, public opinion, and institutional authority. Yet the ultimate challenge remains: how to navigate the ultimatum from King Charles. This formal request to Parliament threatens not only titles and privileges, but the public perception of loyalty, duty, and legitimacy. For Harry, the path forward requires both strategic acumen and emotional resilience. Every decision will have far-reaching consequences, shaping not only his own legacy but the perception of the monarchy in the eyes of the world. Harry's perspective, then, is one of tension, calculation, and resolve. He operates in a space where personal conviction collides with institutional expectation, where public scrutiny amplifies every misstep, and where family loyalty is tested by unprecedented circumstances. His actions reveal a complex balancing act, asserting autonomy while preserving dignity, navigating scrutiny while maintaining strategic advantage, and protecting his family while engaging with a global audience that watches and judges every move. The stakes could not be higher, the scrutiny could not be more intense, and the decisions could not be more consequential. Yet Harry continues to navigate this extraordinary terrain with determination, guided by principle, strategy, and the imperative to protect those he loves. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The world of royalty has always been shrouded in secrecy. Hidden behind palace walls, private correspondence, and centuries of protocol, the family has long controlled the narrative with a combination of discretion and authority. But in the case of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, the delicate balance of secrecy and exposure has been violently disrupted. Reports of secret letters, confidential memos, and strategic leaks have emerged, exposing fissures within the monarchy and forcing the world to confront truths that were meant to remain hidden. These documents and leaks are more than just correspondence. They are revelations, weapons, and catalysts for drama that could reshape the monarchy forever. It begins with the letters themselves. Sources indicate that Prince Harry, in his attempt to navigate family tensions, penned several private communications to senior members of the royal family. These letters were intended to express grievances, clarify intentions, and seek understanding. Yet what was meant to be confidential quickly became fodder for speculation, as the contents of the correspondence began leaking to the press. Headlines splashed accusations of betrayal, claims of disrespect, and hints of irreconcilable differences. Suddenly, the private musings of a prince became a public spectacle, and the monarchy was forced to respond not only to content, but to perception. One letter, described as particularly candid, reportedly outlined Harry's frustrations with palace life, the constraints imposed on him, and the impact of media scrutiny on his personal well-being. He addressed both institutional expectations and familial tensions, emphasizing the need for autonomy and understanding. The tone was both emotional and measured, balancing respect for tradition with an assertion of personal agency. Yet even as the words sought resolution, they were interpreted by outsiders as confrontational and incendiary. The power of the written word, combined with selective leaks, magnified the stakes dramatically. Leaks have played a pivotal role in shaping the narrative. While Harry's letters were meant to communicate privately, media outlets quickly obtained fragments, often out of context, creating a distorted portrayal of events. Analysts suggest that these leaks were strategic, either intentionally or inadvertently, serving to pressure palace officials, influence public opinion, and create leverage in the unfolding conflict. Every line quoted, every phrase dissected, added tension, fueling speculation and debate. The monarchy, accustomed to managing public perception through controlled messaging, suddenly faced a torrent of uncontrolled narrative. But the letters are only part of the story. Confidential memos circulated among senior royal aides and advisors reveal the behind-the-scenes maneuvering that accompanied the escalation. These documents outline strategic recommendations, potential outcomes, and contingency plans for dealing with both Harry and Meghan's actions and the subsequent media fallout. Advisors debated the timing, messaging, and legal ramifications of various responses, aware that any misstep could exacerbate the crisis. The memos illustrate the intersection of personal grievances and institutional strategy, highlighting the complexity of managing a modern monarchy under unprecedented scrutiny. The content of the letters and leaks has had far-reaching consequences. Reports suggest that King Charles and Princess Anne both reviewed and discussed these communications extensively, and reportedly used the letters to reinforce her argument that decisive action was necessary, emphasizing that the monarchy could no longer rely on hope, discretion, or silence. For Charles, the letters provided both insight and pressure: insight into Harry's mindset and intentions, and pressure to act to preserve the credibility and authority of the crown. Each word, each phrase, became a piece in a larger puzzle of power, loyalty, and perception. Leaks have also influenced public opinion in significant ways. Social media platforms erupted with analysis, commentary, and debate. Every snippet of leaked information was dissected, shared, and repurposed, creating a continuous feedback loop of speculation and judgment. Supporters of Harry and Meghan framed the leaks as evidence of systemic rigidity, mismanagement, or unfair treatment. Critics used them to argue that the couple had overstepped boundaries, violated trust, or undermined the monarchy. In this way, the leaks became more than information. They became tools in a battle over narrative control and legitimacy. Insiders suggest that some leaks may have been intentional, designed to exert pressure or provoke response. By releasing selected information strategically, individuals could influence both internal palace decisions and public perception. The timing, content, and framing of leaks suggest a sophisticated understanding of how media, public opinion, and institutional behavior intersect. In this sense, the leaks themselves are a form of power, a way to shape outcomes without formal authority. The letters and leaks have also intensified familial tensions. Members of the royal family, already navigating strained relationships, found themselves responding not only to the content of the messages, but to the broader implications of public exposure. Conversations that once might have remained private were now public by default, with advisors mediating disputes, interpreting intentions, and managing media fallout. The emotional toll on all parties has reportedly been immense, as private grievances are amplified and reputations are contested in real time. At the center of this maelstrom is Harry, who finds himself both vulnerable and empowered. Vulnerable because private communications are now public, exposing him to judgment, criticism, and misinterpretation. Empowered because these letters allow him to articulate his perspective, assert agency, and challenge narratives imposed by the institution. The duality is intense. Every word written carries both risk and potential influence. The balance between transparency and strategy has become one of the central dynamics of the ongoing conflict. The content of the leaked letters also sheds light on Meghan's role. Reports indicate that she provided counsel, reviewed communications, and helped craft messages designed to convey both emotion and rationale. Her strategic involvement highlights a dynamic partnership, with each step carefully considered to navigate the complex interplay of family, media, and public perception. Together, they have managed to create a narrative that is not only reactive but proactive, positioning themselves as actors with agency rather than passive participants in palace intrigue. Legal experts have weighed in on the implications of these leaks. While personal correspondence is typically protected, the unprecedented visibility of royal communications creates a gray area. Leaks can influence legal proceedings, shape public opinion, and affect institutional decision-making. The palace's response, therefore, must account not only for emotion and protocol, but also for legal strategy, media relations, and the preservation of authority. Each action carries multiple layers of consequence, making the management of information a high-stakes exercise in both communication and control. The letters and leaks also underscore the generational and cultural tensions at play. Harry and Meghan's approach reflects modern expectations of autonomy, transparency, and personal agency, challenging the norms and traditions that have guided the monarchy for centuries. The palace's responses reflect a contrasting set of priorities: preservation, discretion, and continuity. The clash between these perspectives drives much of the drama, creating a scenario in which every action is scrutinized, every word analyzed, and every decision potentially transformative. As the leaks continue to surface, the monarchy faces a critical challenge: how to assert control over narrative, authority, and legacy while navigating the realities of a hyper-connected world. The letters serve as both a record of grievances and a catalyst for action, pushing the palace toward decisions that may have been postponed or avoided under less public pressure. Every revelation heightens urgency, escalates tensions, and forces reflection on the delicate balance between tradition and modernity. The emotional impact on the family is palpable. Members are forced to respond not only to the content of the letters, but to the implications for trust, loyalty, and institutional stability. Conversations become strategic negotiations. Interactions are laden with subtext, and relationships are tested under unprecedented visibility. In this environment, the palace must operate with both caution and decisiveness, navigating a landscape in which private correspondence has become a public battlefield. The significance of these secret letters and leaks cannot be overstated. They have shifted the balance of power, introduced new pressures, and catalyzed a series of actions that culminate in the unprecedented involvement of Parliament. They reveal the depth of the rift within the royal family, the intensity of personal grievances, and the strategic acumen of those involved. Above all, they highlight a central truth. In a world of constant scrutiny, private communication is both vulnerable and powerful, capable of shaping perception, influencing decisions, and driving events in unpredictable ways. As the palace braces for the fallout, every actor, from King Charles to Princess and from Harry to Meghan, is acutely aware that the next steps will define the monarchy for years to come. The letters are more than words. They are catalysts, triggers, and, in some ways, harbingers of the storm that is still to come. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The palace had prepared for decades to manage scandals, controversies, and internal disputes, but nothing quite like this. The unprecedented decision by King Charles to involve the UK Parliament in stripping Prince Harry and Meghan Markle of all royal titles and privileges was a seismic shift in modern monarchy. The implications were enormous: legal, political, personal, and symbolic. Suddenly, a family dispute that might have remained private was now a matter of state. The stage was set for an extraordinary confrontation that would test the limits of royal authority, constitutional law, and public perception. The move to involve Parliament was both strategic and symbolic. The monarchy operates within a constitutional framework, where authority is intertwined with tradition, law, and political oversight. By petitioning Parliament, Charles was not only asserting his authority, but also placing the matter within the formal structures that govern the institution. It was a declaration. The monarchy would not tolerate breaches of protocol or challenges to its legitimacy, and titles and privileges, while historically symbolic, were inseparable from responsibility and duty. Legal advisors reportedly spent weeks preparing the petition. Every phrase was scrutinized for precision, every legal precedent analyzed, and every potential counterargument anticipated. Sources suggest that the palace emphasized the constitutional basis for the move, framing it as a matter of public interest and institutional preservation rather than personal vendetta.